Hello, I'm Ed Rabyd, otherwise known as the Rabyd Atheist, a former pastor turned atheist, now a compassionate anti-theist. Welcome to my channel. Feel free to like or dislike the video as you see fit, so feel free to hit those buttons. Feel free to comment below, and I would appreciate it if you would subscribe to the channel and hit your notification bell for more content as it is released. You're also free to share my videos as much as you like, as the purpose of this channel is educational in regards to atheist and deconversion issues, and politics, philosophy, Bible, and theology, and anything else I can think of in relationship to these issues. This is a little bit different video than maybe some of the new subscribers are used to, unless you've been going through my backlog, but I want to do a little personal reflection on the fact that I have been out of the pulpit for 3 years. My last Sunday preaching was May 27th, 2018. I preached from the Ten Commandments. In particular, that Sunday was "Thou shalt not commit adultery," using the text from Exodus. The strange irony of that, of course, was I was having an affair at the time, so yeah, it was a pretty stressful day. In fact, that whole week had been stressful, and I remember it very well. It's hard to forget that time frame. Those few weeks before and after that were pretty emotionally draining. So that was my last sermon, and since then I haven't been in the pulpit. The last time I was in my last church was the day after I preached. I went there and made sure I had all my stuff and gathered up my belongings and headed out to the moderator's house. The moderator is the guy who kind of runs the meetings of the church. He's kind of the de facto kind of guy that's sort of in charge of the congregation besides the pastor. So I went out to his house and resigned, and the rest is history. If you want to look at the rest of my deconversion story, I'll link the entire playlist above my head right about now. If you want to know my backstory and fully, that's the best way to do it. But today I want to talk more about a reflection of whether or not I miss the pulpit, whether or not I miss being a minister. And the qualified answer is no. I don't really miss it anymore. I don't miss all the BS that goes with being a pastor. In fact, it's one of the great challenges since deconverting and since leaving the ministry. And one of the reasons I got into contact with the Clergy Project was I didn't know what the hell I was going to do. I was at the time 49, and I didn't really have any other skills. I was working on a bachelor's degree in political science, but I hadn't finished it yet. And I was in a real interesting position at the time. And so things changed. And so I now have been 3 years out from that. And what do I feel about it now? I don't really think the ministry is a really good career. It's a sucky career. Maybe some people like it, but from a career standpoint, it's garbage. You literally are living on the good graces of others. You're not really, many times in my case, I wasn't, because I had a congregational government church, I really wasn't in charge of anything in sense of, being able to lead the ministries and build the church or anything like that. So that made it difficult. My other experiences in churches were much the same. As much as I tried to lead them, most people just didn't want to follow. So I don't really think it's a great career because, one, I never had a good salary. I think one of the great mythologies about ministry is everybody looks at the big television preachers and assumes that all of us ministers live that way. The truth is, if you want to talk income gap, probably the worst income gap of all is between most of the rank and file preachers, priests, whatever, and the megachurch pastors. Like there's like a huge income gap disparity between those. Most of my fellow ministers that I knew of lived at or below or just slightly above the poverty line. Sure, there's a few benefits to that, but that's why the Clergy Project exists, because one of the great challenges, okay, what do I do to make a living now? And that's been my struggle probably for the last 3 years, is trying to find something that fits me, that makes a living. I think I'm on the right path. Can't go into all the details. But I don't miss that aspect. I certainly don't miss the career of the pastor, because the career of the pastor is kind of shitty. Do I miss helping people? Yeah, I do. Um, I don't miss having to use the Bible or other means of religious indoctrination that, shall we say, I no longer believe that those are effective. I think now, looking back at it and helping people, I would refer a lot to people that actually knew what they were doing. Do I miss preaching? Oh, fuck yeah. It's a high, it's a drug. At least it was for me. I miss that high. I occasionally feel that way when I'm talking to all of you on this channel, but it's not quite the same. My high here is a little bit different. I don't get high while I'm preaching. I get high when I feel like I've touched somebody and they begin to understand that somebody understands, okay, and gets the fact that they've deconverted and why they've deconverted. And when people hear my voice and they comment and say, hey, man, what a great channel, because this is something I've been bugging me. I feel, I don't feel like there's anybody else. And now I find you, and I said, well, welcome to my channel. I miss the aspects of preaching that made it a rush. It was a rush for me. I never hit the pulpit without being nervous. I never got into the pulpit without having that knot in the pit of my stomach. The difference, I think, for me as I continued to preach and got better at it is that I could take that nervous energy and turn it into passion. And I learned, it took me a while to learn it, but preaching is mostly passion. Good preaching, what people consider good preaching, is mostly emotionalism. And it's not just the congregation that gets caught up in the preacher's word. The preacher gets caught up in his own shit too. When I would preach, I'd stand behind my pulpit. Because the microphone was stationary, I had to stay there in my last church. My other churches, I had a lapel and I could move around. It was a little bit nicer, but in that church, I didn't. And so my body English would change when people knew that I was ready to fire, and I'd fire on all cylinders, and I could see that it had an emotional effect on people, and then it emotionally affected me too. It was a rush. It was an endorphin rush. And that part I miss. I miss the endorphin rush of preaching. I don't miss preaching all the bullshit. I don't miss having to open up the Bible. This is my former preaching Bible. I don't miss trying to open this up and try to find some bullshit to preach that may or may not help anyone. And I don't miss doing that. I don't, I still have this Bible. This is my last preaching Bible. This is the last one I used. It's a New American Standard Bible, and I love the New American Standard. It was a little bit more wordy and a little bit higher educated level, but I always felt my position was to read that text and then break it down. And I don't know. I miss the high of it. I don't miss the bullshit of preaching and also along with that teaching. One of the greatest challenges I had the last couple of years is, we were having a Bible study before church would start to anybody who wanted to come. And having to open up the Bible and in particular read from the life of Christ or anything like that. And people would ask me questions about the text and why we should still believe the text, and having to bullshit my way through that for the last 3 years of my ministry was really, really hard. I would give the pat answers a lot of times, but I would be thinking in the back of my head, and I can think about 7 problems with that pat answer. People ask me why I stayed in the pulpit after I didn't believe, and it's like, I don't know what the hell to do. I did immediately. Once I realized I didn't believe, that was when that kind of provided the catalyst for going back to school again. And, I went back to university and I started working on things. And so there was this period where I'm like, okay, if I can just stay in the pulpit long enough to get this degree and get a different job, then I can exit from this and be okay. The problem is my emotional state got worse and worse. the longer I was in the pulpit trying to live this lie. I am not a very good liar. I suck at it. And having to have that high energy to pull that off every Sunday, to just not say anything, to bite my tongue, to just preach the Bible and do what I was supposed to do and make it a job. It was a job, and it was a job I hated. So I don't miss that anymore. I've moved on. In a very real way, this channel has become my new pulpit. But I preach a very different kind of message. And it's not a preachy message. It's a, hey, if you're out there and you're deconverted and you're wondering if anybody gives a shit about you or where the other deconverted Christians are, or whatever, this channel is for you. Okay, I address the issues most of the time that people have. I think I've got a couple things on my docket. I've got to look into the greed. I've got to look into the abuse of discipleship and get some numbers on that. That may be the problem. There may not be a number, so I may be just engaging in theoretics at that point. But I want you to understand, when you come here, you're coming to a person who has been in the ministry for 20 years and who has looked at it and said, this is bullshit, and walked away. At the age of 49, when I didn't really have a lot of prospects anymore, I didn't know what the hell I was going to do. The Clergy Project kind of helped me get through all that. I can't sing their praises enough. If you are a minister right now and you don't believe in anything supernatural, and you are caught in the pulpit and you're trying to preach, I can't emphasize enough, get into the Clergy Project now. I really wish that I had gotten into the Clergy Project before I exited, because I could have shared a lot of the things that I was going through and maybe avoided the affair, maybe avoided a lot of other things, because the emotional stress of doing that would not have been there. I guess in many ways I'm writing this reflection to those of you out there that are in the pulpit. You don't believe anymore. You're an atheist. You don't believe in anything supernatural anymore. Contact the Clergy Project. Just type it in, Clergy Project. You will find it. And somebody will get in contact with you. I can't emphasize that enough. And for me, that was the mistake. If I had done that sooner, I would have probably avoided the affair, and I probably would have avoided other pitfalls. I would have just stayed in the pulpit for another year, got my degree, found a job, and got the hell out. But it was one of those things where the stress of things just kept getting to me. And so eventually it made me in an emotionally vulnerable state, and somebody came along and filled that void. And so that was the problem. Don't harbor any ill will to this person, by the way. I don't have the capacity to do it. People ask me about that all the time. Don't you hate people that were involved? There's only one person that I still have anger issues with, and it's because it was a backstab. Everybody else involved was just hurt, okay? And the young woman that I was involved with, she was in her own fog with her own personal problems. And it was a volatile cocktail mix of emotions, and that's what it ended up being, and that's why it fell apart. I don't have the capacity to hate anybody that I've loved before. Any woman that I have loved in the past, I don't hate them. I don't have the capacity to do it. I have tried. I've tried to fall out of love with them, and I've tried to love the things, but it just doesn't work. That's a little bit of more personal thing about me. I don't have the capacity to hate very well, and still don't. I recently did a reaction to Catholic priests, and a lot of people are saying, well, why, this guy's, why are you soft soaping this guy? I've actually gotten that in a private comment. I'm like, because I used to be him. Okay, I used to be the guy that was deluded by his faith. And that's kind of another part of this reflection, is coming out of the fog. I want to encourage some of you out there that have just left your faith, or you haven't been out too long, and you're thinking to yourself, oh, how the holy hell am I going to get through all these emotions and all this bullshit? Be patient with yourself. It's taken me 3 years to get to the point where I can say, I truly do not miss the ministry and I truly do not miss my faith anymore. They were just anchors on my life that didn't allow my life to go some of the places that I think it's going to go. And I want you to just be encouraged to be patient with yourself, to not beat yourself up too much if you fall into the trap of thinking certain ways or wrestling with certain questions. And, you're not going to be the guy that just suddenly knows everything you need to know about life now that you've discarded your faith. It takes time. It really takes time. I'm kind of a science guy, and I was a big-time creationist almost up to the time I stopped believing. And, once I got out of that, boy, I've been just eating up anything that, deals with the creationist arguments, but also I have really been eating up anybody that just talks about the origin of the universe or evolution, and just learning about that is just so fascinating to me. I was more of a physics, rocketry kind of guy when I was in high school, and all of that just kind of has come back into my life, and it's just wonderful again. You begin to look at the wonder of the world as an atheist a little bit differently. You're not looking at it through a spiritual lens or some preconceived notion. And it takes time. It's taken me time to get rid of old ways of thinking. And 3 years since I've been in the pulpit, 6 years since I've deconverted, I still have a long way to go. There's a lot of issues that I still have not settled on. I find this a very interesting journey as I continue to, walk the line of trying to figure this life out now that I don't have an imaginary friend to guide me, and really truly understanding that I'm guiding myself. I'm not being puppeted by some divine being. I am doing it. I'm doing it myself. And it's that realization that really is tough to get a hold of. It's really tough I get it. Okay. So if you're looking for a place as a deconverted individual where you can ask a question from time to time and get an understanding, not just a knowledgeable understanding of what you're going through, but some empathy and some understanding, you've come to the right place. I'm not bragging about that. I don't always get to everybody's comment right away, but deconversion is one of those things where you can ask a question, wait a few hours, and get a response. It's not, unless you're like really being emotionally pressured, it's not or in a real bad conversation, just walk away from the conversation, come back and ask your question, and, we'll figure it out. I'm not perfect. And I'm okay with that. I don't know a lot of things, and I'm okay with that. I've learned to be comfortable with saying I don't know, but I'll try to find out. I used to say, well, God, or, we got to be patient and let God work it out, or anything like bullshit like that. It's all punting, by the way. And when ministers do that, they don't really know, so they're just kind of punting. So instead of saying I don't know, well, we just got to turn to somebody who does know God. Well, he doesn't exist, so at least the biblical God from the Bible certainly doesn't exist. But, that kind of issue is something that you can wait and be patient with yourself, take your time, do your research. I really have this great temptation since I've been out of the pulpit to rush things, because I've wasted so much time in the pulpit and so much time being a Christian. And I just want to make up for that. But I've had to pull the brakes on a couple of times and say, hey, Ed, you got time to work on this. You're not going to be able to recover everything that you lost by spending all this time in this faith thing. And you have to be okay with that too, that there are some things that have been lost that can never be regained or, reimagined. But there are future things that you can now look at and try to get there. So yeah, I've been out of the pulpit for 3 years. I've been out of Christianity technically for 6 years. And, I just want to reflect and say, yeah, it's been good. It was an up and down roller coaster until I left the pulpit. And then it was kind of a roller coaster for a little while, for a few months. But since then it's stabilized, and it's taken me a while to get through some things. but it's okay. And life is good, and I'm looking for a better one. And I'm much more at peace with myself than I have ever been with the guy that was constantly dogging himself with the thought of you're a sinner and you're not good enough. My level of self-love 3 years ago was very low, and now it's much higher. It's not perfect, and I'm still working on it. It's why I still have a therapist. It's why I still keep in contact with the Clergy Project when I'm going through a rough time. It's that kind of thing, and it's been good. And after 3 years, I can confidently say I'm much more in love with who I am and with being, truly the master of my own fate than I have ever been in my life. And I'm not constantly dogging myself with the you're not good enough stuff and saying, you know what, maybe you're not good enough at certain things, but you are good at this and you can succeed at this. And the whole mindset has just changed, and it's just wonderful. I want to thank everybody for stopping by and listening to an ex-preacher ramble a little bit on how he feels about his deconversion 3 years ago and some of the feelings that he has. And, it's been good. And I appreciate everybody coming by. I appreciate every like, share, subscribe, so on and so forth. You guys have been great. This last month has just been outstanding. I've almost literally doubled the amount of subscribers I've had in the last month, from the beginning of the month till now, and I'm humbled by that. I have no idea what's going on other than I'm getting more comments, I'm getting more likes, I'm getting more views, and so the YouTube algorithm is putting me out there more and more, and I'm good with that, and I'm going to grow this thing as big as I possibly can and hold on to that audience for as long as possible and see what I can do with it. I definitely want to influence people to deconvert, and once they've deconverted, to be patient with themselves and honor that. And you guys right now are making that possible with every subscribe, with every like, with every comment, with every share. It's just overwhelmingly positive so far. There's a few people out there that have given me a hard time the last couple of weeks, but they sooner or later they screw up with my no personal attacks rule, and they get blocked. So it's kind of the way it goes. Once again, thank you for stopping by, and you can follow me on Facebook as well. It's a great way to get announcements, the videos, anything else, a few occasional memes I post from other sites. If that's what you're into, it's a platform that you can learn a little bit more, and I appreciate it if you would subscribe to that too. And once again, thank you for stopping by, and hopefully I can convince you to be a rabid atheist like myself. In the meantime, this is Rabyd, also known as the Rabid Atheist, signing off and wishing you a good day.